Hi all, welcome to this special edition of Data Minds podcast from Data Science Conference here in Belgrade. This podcast shooting is done in cooperation with Waterdrop, who is helping us promote the podcast and are supporting us on the conference. And with me today I have Thomas. Thomas, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
When have you arrived in Belgrade?
Today actually, I arrived here, yes, and a little side story. Yesterday I had a great meeting in Germany with a potential customer who's doing some amazing AI stuff. And I took the train home and I slept only 1 hour.
Oh.
So maybe you can get some interesting facts out of it.
Let's try to wake you up, but I hope you have decent hotel tonight so you can sleep. Huh?
I'm staying right here, and I actually heard that this Waterdrop has coffee in it, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Substitute for coffee. That's great. Can you share a bit about yourself and your company, maybe with the audience?
So I'm Thomas. Fairly young, I think, for a founder, 33 years old. But I have the great luck that I have two other founders. Also one called Thomas and one called Michael, who are a bit older, in their mid-50s. And they have been around the AI world for decades, actually. Thomas is one of the professors in the Technical University of Munich. And he was one of the first people globally to develop GPU software.
Very nice.
And from that starting point, back in 2006, you have to imagine nobody knew NVIDIA apart from maybe some gamers. So they were very interested in him developing GPU software, and they told him, hey, maybe you can also sell our GPU accelerated cards, and that was the starting point. So Amber may have been founded only 2 years ago, but actually Fluidyna, the company from Thomas, has been founded 16 years ago and has been one of the, let's say, founding fathers as well in this area of NVIDIA's growth. And Thomas is actually friends with Jensen, which is pretty cool. And from there we developed a very strong foundation within Europe. We're well known at NVIDIA, and let's say we have had some success in participating in the NVIDIA success story as well in the last few years. I personally have been a, what is it called in English, economics, computer science student at the Technical University as well. Did my bachelor, did my master's, and then from there I basically immediately went into sales jobs, combining tech and trying to improve old processes in at the beginning, retail stores, for example, using AI to recognize what people are buying and to improve the sales of the stores. And from there, my way went to Amber somehow, being one of the leading NVIDIA elite partners in Europe.
Before we dive into technical topics and what you're doing in Amber, you triggered me when you said there are 3 founders and basically you are like 15 years younger than the other 2. Yes. How does that work with the clash of generation? Are you the one who is pulling all the work and they're advising, or because I have similar shareholding structure in SmartCat as well, where we have 2 guys who are really in late 50s and the rest of us are younger, and we have, this is good, but it can be bad in some situations.
Exactly. I would totally agree. I would say I'm much more open to risk than the other 2, for example. But on the other hand, they have a huge amount of experience they could get back onto. So I think it was really checks and balances. So they kept me in check at some points, but then I pushed them towards growing faster, checking out new markets. I would not say that I'm the workhorse. I would say the others are doing just as much as me, and everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. I think for us it works really well. There has been critical moments within our company history, but nothing you couldn't get through if you actually work on it together, which is important, I think, for every founding team. And I think I'm very happy with the balance we have.
That's a good balance. Energy meets experience, probably, right?
Exactly, yes.
Great, and I think majority of us are just clicking on Amazon, Azure, GCP, and getting some instances, CPU, GPU, and just deploying our applications. Can you share a bit how one data center becomes reality?
how one data center becomes reality is in Germany, for example, or in Europe, is a long process. Globally seen, it goes much quicker in the US, in Asia, in the Middle East, because there a lot of people with money and governments have understood that AI will shape society and industries in basically every way or form that you can imagine. Now we have two different aspects here. We have AWS. Hyperscalers are not bad. Hyperscalers are perfectly fine. They have their target audience. They have the people they need to meet. For example, for a lot of startups, it's a good way to go with startups. Use their inception startup programs. Get started in the field because owning a system, operating a system, it is expensive and it is a lot of technical expertise needed. Of course, we, for example, help with this, but you need to be at a certain point of let's say development within your own company to ensure that you have both the funds and the need for the hardware investment, for example, or to have a longer running managed service agreement, for example. What does it give you? If you own it, the total cost of ownership is much lower. Over 3 years, you will save an enormous amount of money. You can say, for example, roughly after 18 months of using a hyperscaler, you could own the infrastructure and run it for 3 years. Roughly. So if you know you have a baseline that you will need, then owning it makes sense. On the other hand, you know where your data is, and this will get much
becoming
more
important topic, right?
Right. We are living in crazy times. We have a new U.S. government on the other side. You don't know what kind of compliance regulations will still be followed on there. So you, especially on the big customers, we have enterprises. Their IP is their lifeblood, and they have to make sure it's not being lost, being used somewhere else. So that's why a lot of customers, they had this cloud-first approach for AI. Now they're slowly coming back as well.
So you see companies starting with private cloud.
Yes, we're seeing a pendulum swing coming back. It's also triggered by the EU, for example. We have the AI Act here. We have to make sure that certain data is being processed in certain ways. So there is this regulation need as well, on the other hand.
And do you see, I can imagine that the majority of the cases are still migrations, where company starts, reaches product market fit with the software, realize that scaling will be really expensive on Amazon AWS or something like that, and then they start thinking about alternatives and they come to you, right?
If they're at that point, then they really hurt already.
They're hurt, right?
Yes, because the data is already there and they need to get their data back, and that will usually cost them basically a year of running the cluster on AWS again, just to get their data out, for example. So we actually see a lot of, for the bigger customers at least, for the enterprises, we see a lot of research teams having their own on-prem production kind of research clusters where they really focus on getting their work done. This is important, because if you give a researcher a system and you tell him you now need to make sure this system is being used all the time, and he will not think about is this use case worth getting some credits in AWS. He's thinking about building new use cases. He's thinking about developing something to make sure he gets more systems in the future as well. So you give your researchers a whole different mindset. Instead of trying to save costs by not running every POC, you basically move them towards running as much as possible. And that is what a lot of customers really actually need as well. They need to get away from we're worried about will this give us a return of investment. Sometimes you will find this return of investment only after you're actually running the project.
We see a lot. We see also a lot of hybrid approaches where you have a portion of workloads on hyperscalers and portion of workload on premise.
What we like to say is own the base and then burst in the cloud. So if you know you have a baseline that you always need to fulfill, that is something you should own. For many different reasons. It is, of course, the cost aspect, it's the data regulation aspect, but what I always think is important as well is where does the power come from to run your systems, right? We all have these climate protection goals in our big customers, but if you give it away into the cloud, then I don't care where the energy is coming from.
Yeah,
it can be from coal, it can be from nuclear, whatever. If you want to make sure that your power is green, is renewable, for example, then you need to kind of know where the data center is and how it's being run as well.
For example, if I need a data center in SmartCAD and I call you, how does this project start? You mentioned green, you mentioned calculating probably emission, calculating consumption power of energy, then doing some probably sizing of the disks and network and everything. How does that go? Can you explain a bit in details?
You would call me and then we would talk about what you actually want to do and what you're doing right now already. So a lot of our customers, they have some use case ongoing at the moment, for example, right? And then we help them with the sizing. We tell them, all right, how many data scientists do you have? How big is the amount of data that you have? How many users do you want to reach? For example, SmartCAD, right? As far as I know, you do translating work, for example.
Yeah, we are building solutions for others. So usually we are not end customers, but someone else is.
Yes, but then you need to, for example, know how many of their, how many people will use this solution. That will drastically change the amount of inference infrastructure you need. So that is where we would start talking about. Then we would talk about, do you have some constraints where these infrastructure things have to be? Does it have to be on site with the customer because it's protected data? Can it be somewhere in Europe because it is data protected again? Or can it be globally somewhere else? Is money the main constraint? Should we go somewhere where power is cheap? But still on the green side, for example, that is why a lot of data centers go to Norway or Iceland. It's cold and there's a lot of hydro energy. So we see a lot of customers who say, yes, it's fine if the data is there, they will go there. So that's some of the things we would talk about. Sizing, where do you want to go, how do you want to scale? You never want to touch a cluster that you started with, and then take it down and change the networking, for example. That takes on the whole production of the system and loses you a huge amount of money. So we always think into the future, where do you want to go? What are the use cases? How can we help?
You mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken, in 18 months pretty much you can reach the same
TCO,
TCO. What is the situation in hardware and GPUs right now, because there is hyper development, right? How long is the cycle where your hardware that you are buying is good for workloads that we have? Because in both in consumption and in hardware development there are really good
a lot of
innovation, a lot of innovation, a lot of right?
They don't want to invest a lot of money and then after a year they have old systems again, right? But the general rule of thumb is roughly 3 years.
2 years.
2 to 3 years. 3 years is where the sweet spot for most customers are, and we actually help with something that's called lifecycle leasing. So you can have the cluster and you only pay a monthly fee, for example, similar to what you would do in the hyperscaler, but still it will be on-prem, it will be your cluster, only you will be on it. And after 3 years, similar to your car, you can return the cluster, get the new cluster for the same pricing, or depends on the amount of compute resources you want them. Maybe you get less systems after 3 years, but they are X times more efficient, so you would have the same amount of performance for the price. So you can take care of that risk if you want to. There are options to eliminate that as well.
Here in Serbia we have national data center in Kragujevac, and you can pretty much buy your server and GPU and take it there, and they provide electricity and uptime and maintenance. Probably you do something similar with this leasing structure. Do you have your own data centers?
Amber does not have their own data center. We work together with, for example, Equinix, Digital Realty, NTT. There's a lot of co-location players out there, and we actually help them in designing and building the data centers of the future. So everything is moving towards liquid cooling now, because the limits of physics will be reached within the next year or two. The new systems from NVIDIA, the GB200, they will already be liquid cooled. and there will be one rack with 120 kilowatts of power. It's a massive amount of power per rack. No data center is basically ready for it right now. You need to work on this early on. What we also do is we, for example, work with container solutions. So you have a shipping container, and then it is filled with servers, with racks. It has a cooling solution on top. You just need to connect it to your network and your power, and everything. The water is internally. It does not need to go out. So there's solutions for this as well. But yes, there's a lot of co-location providers out there. You do not need to build your own data center. Building a data center, I mean the actual building, that can take years. Germany is well known for its regulations and laws, and we have some customers who want to build a new cluster. They want to do AI work, and they're saying building a new building takes us 3 years. And until then, this building will not even be ready for the new technology because everything is being developed so quickly. So yes, there are other solutions that we can help with as well.
You wanted to talk about geography, which is this is nice segue to that topic. If I know correctly, Germany has a law where you disassembled nuclear power plants, right? France is big on nuclear. In US, hyperscalers are talking about reusing old power plants. How do you see this electricity and geography movement against data centers?
Yes, so in general, what's really interesting, if you collect all of the data centers globally and you would list them as one country using energy, it would be ranked number 16. So it is a huge amount of power being used by AI already. We all know that. But if you actually move old legacy systems, whether it be old GPUs or even much better CPU servers into GPUs, you can save a huge amount of energy. That is a very important thing, and I personally believe AI will be necessary to tackle all of the big challenges we will face in the next 30 years, whether it be climate change, the next pandemic, whatever. So if I take a look at it globally now, energy in Germany is extremely expensive. So we need to make sure that energy is viable for our customers as well in Germany, or that our customers can use energy where it is available. For example, in Norway, Iceland, where they have lower temperature, you need less cooling, and you have a lot of hydro energy. Another thing we see globally, what is very important, and I think we will change this in the next years, the amount of investment going on in the US, in Asia, in the Middle East, it is 10 to 100 times more than what we see in Europe right now. So Europe is a bit risk averse. You see some players, France for example is very good with their government, they're pushing, they understood data, AI is important. You see some, for example in Germany, Heilbronn, you have the Schwarz Group, they're investing billions. But again, these are local players doing important work. We need to see more of this. We need to see the big customers, VW, BMW, you need to see the governments.
Even national strategies, right? Governments,
You need, this is what the EU is made for, to work together, share data, share budgets, and then build a strategy together and a vision.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask you about use cases. Are you following development of software and solutions, and which solutions or which industries, or however you want to divide them, are drawing smile on your face when they come to Ember? Because you know that training and inference will be really a lot of consumption.
Yes. So what's important is we don't develop any solutions ourselves.
Yeah, but you are following, of course.
Yes, we only help our customers in getting the resources they need. What's almost being seen as AI everywhere right now is Gen AI. But Gen AI is not the entirety of an AI.
No.
If someone comes with a Gen AI use case to me and says he wants to train a foundational or even just fine-tune a model, that makes me smile, of course, because I know he will need a lot of resources to run it, and he will need a lot of inferencing to actually use it on the customer base he has. But I think there are a lot of other use cases that are just as important, if not even more important. I love everything computer computer vision related,
Yeah.
for example. That's great.
I wanted to mention that.
Yeah. I love autonomous driving, autonomous trains. Germany has a huge problem with their trains being late nowadays, right? We used to be this very strict and this globally seen as we're on time, and our trains are on time 50% of the time. That's terrible. So AI is something that could greatly help there, and it is something that can, again, now getting back to Gen AI, it is something that can connect different nationalities. For example, it can, like the work you do, help you get across language barriers.
Yeah.
And for example, getting into new country, getting a chatbot from the government to help you with different regulations, processes, whatever. There's a lot there. What I personally have seen great movement in the last year has been robotics. So there has been a lot of synthetic data generation, a lot of simulation going on in the robotic world, a lot of investment there as well. And I think that will, again, change society in not 5 years, but in 10 years.
Probably it will be a mix between data center and doing stuff on servers and edge computing directly in robot, right?
There's edge devices as well, being at the factory, being in cars, being on the robots, very small GPUs. It doesn't even have to be, we're an NVIDIA lead partner and we love NVIDIA, but there are other chips that are very niche that can do something very well. And they're very small, can be right there on the edge. Silo AI, for example, is something we saw here in Europe. Of course, if you want to be more general, if you want your infrastructure to be able to do everything, then GPUs from NVIDIA are the way to go, because that's what they can do. You know your infrastructure is capable of running all the different use cases.
Exciting new world.
It is.
Is there something that I haven't asked you and you wanted to talk about, or you would like to catch up on sleep? And
no, thank you. Actually, you woke me up greatly.
We did good for your 1 hour sleep night before, right?
Yes, I think your questions really woke me up. That was great. Water drop has been great as well. It tastes amazing, so I like that, and the caffeine is also great. I think everything Amber related, NVIDIA, AI related, we've touched upon. I think it's really important that we all see the world is going to change, society will change, and we can all decide in which direction. Will it be better? Will it be worse? I don't mean that AI will take over the world and hurt us, but we need to see how it will affect our jobs, how it will affect our society, how it will affect our day-to-day life. And I think that is something that I personally am very interested in. I just had my first son 8 months ago, and he will, I believe, grow up in a totally different world again to what we did. And we've been growing in the digital world, but the next 30 years will be very interesting.
Definitely.
I think it's important to change and shape the future as well.
Thanks, Thomas, for stopping by and sharing your story. Since you ended up on a positive note, on the other side is a SmartCat booth where you are throwing small balls in different like bottles. One of them is Optimist, the other is Skeptic, etc., etc. Make sure to throw your ball in Optimist part, so we have analytics who stopped by our booth. And enjoy the conference, enjoy Belgrade, have sleep tonight, so you have more.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it was a great talk. Whenever you need me again, I'd love to be.
Thank you.
Thanks.